Let's go to the National Senator, Matt Canavan. Senator, good morning to you. So we'll start with Scott Morrison because it is still there. It's still in the news with that report coming today by the Solicitor General. Richard Marles has said this morning that there should be severe consequences for Scott Morrison. What do you think is a suitable response from either him or Peter Dutton?
I think a more suitable response for Mr Marles is to get back to his job. He is meant to be the Minister for Defence, and Anthony Albanese, I thought, has been elected our Prime Minister, but they've spent the last week now, this has been going on for over a week, distracted by the former government, not focused on the current government. There are a lot of challenges right now facing the country, and I would much prefer if the new government got on with the job. The reality is that whatever the controversy about Scott Morrison's decisions, it had no real consequence of any great note on his government or the country, and we should get back to focusing on real things.
One of the consequences, though, was against the Nats. Though we spoke about this last week, to be fair, and Keith Pitt and Pep 11. So there is consequences there that did affect the coalition. You did have members of the coalition who added fuel to the fire too by saying Scott Morrison should resign. But despite all of that, are the battlers in danger of being forgotten about here?
Well, look, I do worry right now about the distraction and that this is causing, and I think there's a real risk now with apparently Anthony Albanese going to release the legal advice that he'll undermine the Commonwealth's legal position. Keep in mind, on that PEP 11 case, it's before the courts right now, so it's highly unusual. Indeed, I would say highly inadvisable for the Commonwealth to release its legal advice on matters that go to an issue before the courts. It seems to me that here Anthony Albanese is putting his own political interest ahead of the national interest because he wants to keep this going. He wants to keep hammering the former Prime Minister and try and tie in the Nationals Party and other ministers. But it's highly unusual for a Commonwealth government to release the legal advice it gets on matters like this. And I would ask us, I think he's presenting at Cabinet this morning. I hope Cabinet ministers have something to say here about the novel feature of this approach, because, as I say, we've got to get back to focusing on the higher energy prices that are putting at risk our country's jobs, our manufacturing industry. We've got to get back to the national security issues involving Taiwan. The ministerial jobs that Scott Morrison appointed himself years ago are totally irrelevant to those issues.
Some Nats are fuming, though, about Scott Morrison's secret portfolios. The Nats are going to the Job Summit. The Libs are not. Is the coalition a happy family at the moment?
Look, well, there's always a healthy tension between the Liberal and Nationals parties. The discussions and debate that was had about PEP 11 aren't unusual. It was unusual for the Prime Minister to appoint himself to those roles. But look, that's well in the past now. And as Peter Dutton said last week, he certainly won't be acting in this way. So that's not a big issue.
Right.
Look, my view is the Job Summit will just be a complete talk fest. Let's wait and see. There's probably a few predetermined media releases that the Labor Party have already written.
Anthony Albanese has already called us.
I don't think it have much influence.
He's already called it a success because we're talking about it. I mean,
well, exactly right. Well, that's the point, isn't it? It's predetermined. The stuff that's actually said at meetings like this doesn't make a difference. This is just a prop. People are just being used as a prop to help the Labor Party progress their particular agenda they want to pursue.
Are there simple answers here in your view, especially when it comes to migration? Increase the amount of staff at Home Affairs visa processing because funding was gutted by your former government, but also increase migration as well.
Look, there's no doubt we have to take in more migrants than we have in the last couple of years, keeping in mind we basically have taken none during the COVID period. But I don't like the lazy, if you like, the lazy reflex to go to the migration solution. What we really should be focusing on as a country is increasing our productivity, increasing what we produce. That will help real wages go up and help businesses be able to afford those real wages, because each worker, each Australian will be producing more, will be worth more if we are more productive. So that means getting our energy prices down. That means building better infrastructure to facilitate that. I just worry there's this sort of a reflex
that all takes time
from big business, because they want cheap wages. The big businesses want they don't want to pay you more. They don't want to pay workers more. They want the cheap wages, so they're desperate to get these workers from overseas. I'd much prefer we invest in Australians first.
Okay, just a final one here, because Chris Bowen, he flagged tougher fuel emissions standards last week. He does say, though, it's not a carbon tax. What are your thoughts on what he had to say about the shortage of electric vehicles here and the plans to get more in?
Well, it's a broken promise, Peter. The Labor Party said before the election they would not be introducing standards on carbon.
They didn't make it an election pitch, though.
Sorry?
They didn't make fuel emissions standards an election pitch, though.
Well, I suppose it depends on what your definition of pitch is. They definitely said they would not be putting in a carbon dioxide standard on vehicles. And now, just weeks after the election, Chris Bowen's out there flagging that they might do that very thing. And this goes to my point. I don't know if Anthony Albanese is in control of his own government. I mean, Scott Morrison's decisions on his portfolio were a little bit weird, but I have to say he was in charge. You knew who was in charge of the country when Scott Morrison was leaving the country. I don't know if Anthony Albanese knows what Chris Bowen's up to, putting on a new carbon tax on people's cars, on their vehicles, telling you you'll have to pay more for utes and four-wheel drives. That'll be great for our nation's farmers. And then you've got Tanya Plibersek out there yesterday also saying no to gas developments in Western Queensland, which we desperately need right now. Well, what's going on with this government? They're not focused on the real issues.
Matt Canavan, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your time, though. We'll talk to you soon.